The primary election is now behind us, looking ahead to the general election, which is in November, which will come a lot faster than I think we think here. We're focusing here on Congressional District 4. Sam Peters on the Republican side is running to take the seat. Sam, good to see you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, let's get into things a little bit here. Let's talk a little bit about your background. You were a veteran. You have an insurance business here in town. What about your experience qualifies you, or do you think would be good assets to bring to Congress?
Yeah, so I did. I spent 20 years in the military. I joined the military right out of high school. I was an enlisted guy for 10 years. I was a law enforcement canine handler, so I did police work with a dog. And then I commissioned. I earned my degrees. I've got a degree in criminal justice, a master's degree in administration. I earned those along the way. I was offered a commission by the Air Force, and I worked as an officer. I led people. I led organizations. I've worked on the federal budget, the palming process to build the president's budget from the bottom up. So I know how that practice works. I also worked on projects to support security at the southern border. So I have a background in those type of things. I spent time in Iraq and Afghanistan. I led people in those areas. I earned a Bronze Star in Afghanistan as well. When I retired, I started a small business. I'm a small business owner. I also have small children that are, we're homeschooling at this point. So there's a lot of pieces in my background that fit together, that come together. The U.S. Constitution says law and finance are the responsibility of the U.S. House of Representatives, and that's what I'm running for. I've worked in law enforcement. I understand law. As an officer, you have to understand law as well. And I've worked on that budget, that finance piece. And oh, by the way, I'm in the insurance world now, and personal financial representative as well. So I've got experience in all of those. I've also got a master's degree in, again, finance with organizational finance, administration with organizational finance. So there's a lot of pieces to my background that suit me well for this role, and I'm passionate about it, and I love my country.
We'll talk about the economic and the immigration issue in just a few moments here. You've run for this seat before.
I did.
What makes this election different?
So anytime you do something for the first time, there's a learning curve, right? In 2020, I ran for the seat. There was 8 people in it. We worked real hard, and we came in a very close second place. And we learned a lot there. We gained a lot of support through that, and we brought that into this election cycle with us. That support and those educational pieces as well. So.
I would imagine, I think I know the answer to this question, but in your view, is the environment different for you running for the GOP than it was back in 2020 that might lead to more success?
Absolutely. I mean, I was an outsider. I was a newcomer to the process of running for office within the political sphere. I'm very involved in my community. I was a board member on Rotary clubs. I've done a lot of work with Project 150 and those type of places. So very involved in the community, but going into the political sphere of influence within the community, it's a different atmosphere, different group of people, and the second time around, obviously people knew who I was.
Let's talk about some of the current issues right now in the country, and obviously one of the main ones is the issue of abortion, the recent decision by the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. You're pro-life, anti-abortion, pretty...
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
The anti-abortion, that's a little stretch, but
well,
go
let's
ahead.
clarify.
We'll talk about that, yeah.
Fair enough. So let's clarify. Are there any circumstances where you believe an abortion is okay?
So my abortion stance has been on my website for 3 years. It's sampetersforcongress.com. You can go out and take a look at it. I am a supporter of the Pain Capable Child Protection Act, which goes to a 20-week time frame. So the Democrats have already, in fact, as soon as I won the primary, they came out, labeled me in certain ways, anti-abortion being one of them. There are circumstances where it is appropriate, and the rhetoric now that Sam Peters wants to strip women of their rights to health care is an absolute falsehood, and I'm not going to allow that to pervade. So the reality of it is the Roe versus Wade overturn had zero effect on Nevada law. The Nevada law was put in place in Carson City, and if it's going to change, that's where it's going to change again. So the other piece of that is, while it is an important and historic overturn, that's not, in my opinion, the biggest issue in the American people's minds. Our economy is, and what's hitting our pocketbooks every single day is a result of this administration and, quite frankly, Congressman Horsford. So.
And again, we'll touch on the economy in a second here. Just to follow up, though, you mentioned that in Nevada has no effect, and that's a state law, obviously, and you're running for Congress, which is different.
Correct.
But do you support keeping Nevada's current laws in place, just as a Nevadan?
As a Nevadan, I mean, we have to elect people to Carson City to address those issues. I'm running for Congress at the U.S. House, and again, the biggest issues at the federal level are our economy, our immigration issues, from there, the debt and spending, which goes into the economy, and our hyperinflation that we're going into, the recession that's coming. All of those things have to be addressed, and I think those issues are more forward on people's minds.
A final question, though, on the Roe v. Wade decision. There was a concurrent decision made by a ruling from Justice Thomas. And in it, there are some discussion from Democrats, anyway, that they're concerned about the potential of reversing previous decisions on gay marriage, issues on contraception, things along those lines. Should those be revisited by the court, and would you want to revisit them in Congress?
Those are going to be determined by the court. And again, my focus is not those social issues. My focus is very much on economy, immigration, and crime, the crime waves that's going on in our country right now. All of those things. So if the court decides to revisit that, that's on the courts. I have no intention of pushing the court in that direction.
There's also right now in Washington, the January 6th House Select Committee is looking into what took place back in 2021. You talk about election security on your website as part of your campaign. First, do you believe the 2020 election was stolen?
So the New York Times actually did an article on me a year and a half ago, and my position has not changed. The election occurred. There are questions that still go unanswered, which frankly is part of the January 6th events that are going on now, the committees. I think there are things that we need to do in our election to tidy them up and make sure questions. And look, our elections they have to be respected by the people. They have to be accepted by the people. And if the people on whole, or in majority or a large portion of us, of people in the community, don't believe that the election was fair, then let's look at it. Let's ask those questions. Let's get to the bottom of the questions and the answers. But let's do it in a civil way. Let's make sure that we're doing it legally. And I'm a fan of voter ID across the board. And I don't think that's something that's been painted as disingenuous and disenfranchising for a certain population. Totally disagree with that.
Obviously, it's a House Select Committee. If you were in the House now, would you have asked to be a part of or wanted to be a part of this investigation?
I would have been asking questions whether or not I was allowed on the committee. Again, there was a number of Republicans that were denied access to being on the committee after being selected by the Republicans. Nancy Pelosi denied them access on it, which calls into question the validity of the commission to the committee, as far as I'm concerned. So that would have been a decision that wouldn't have been mine to make.
Overall, what do you think of what the committee is doing right now? Have you watched the hearings at all? Do you think it's a dog and pony show? What do you think?
I think there's a little bit of a lot of witch hunt going on there. I think it's a lot of grandstanding, and again, it's one of those things that I don't think the American people are fully engaged in it, because there's other things on their mind, like the things we've talked about.
And on that note, let's talk about the economy. You talk about a bunch of different things, and you mentioned the high inflation right now. One of the aspects of your campaign, you talk about a balanced budget amendment. Yeah. Explain what you would like to try and bring to Congress on that.
Yeah, so a balanced budget amendment just simply means that we don't spend more money than we have to spend. We keep it within a margin of inflation. Right now, a lot of the bills coming out of Congress and the Senate, you're looking at $1 trillion spending bills, and the $1 trillion spending bills are not spending the money where the title of the bill would lead you to believe. And the reality of it is that the U.S. House, again, is responsible for all things law and finance, which includes passing a federal budget, which hasn't been done since 1997. So you could not come to work for 25 years, not do your job, and still have a job. And that's what we're talking about with balanced budgets and making sure. Look, we have a $30 trillion debt. It's not sustainable. It's going up every single year, and every single year we're looking at raising the debt ceiling to allow more debt. That plays into this inflationary environment, and what's $6, $7, $8 gas, that's coming, and it's something that we have to get ahead of quickly.
So if you're elected into Congress, what do you do? What do you do to try and balance the budget, try and adjust spending in other places and move it someplace else, or just not spend it all?
Yeah, we stopped spending billions of dollars on gender studies in Pakistan. We stopped spending $25 million, which was part of one of the $1 trillion spending bills, $25 million to, for instance, the Kennedy Center, so they don't have to lay off their employees. And then once they got the money, they laid off their employees. So, those type of things, we have to have some accountability on where our monies are going, and we have to spend it smartly. Billions and billions of dollars being spent on, in fact, I think it was in 2019, $360 million were allocated and spent on programs that no longer have legal standing. So, we have to get in front of where our federal government is spending money, and the people that are there now, to include my opponent, they are not doing their job.
Let's talk about immigration. We just saw the tragedy down in near San Antonio this week. A horrible situation. Yes. Dozens of people that died brought into the country. Mm-hmm. You talk about finishing the wall. There's other elements of immigration that you mentioned you would like to tackle. What do you think is the most important thing that you would like to do if you're elected right away?
Close the border.
Close it.
Just close the border. We don't know the people that have...
Southern and northern, eastern, all the borders.
We need to close the southern border where the caravans are coming in. Millions of people are coming in is focus number one. We have to get a handle on, no question, all of these other borders, as you mentioned, because it's all of our ports, our international airports, the northern border can become a problem as well if people are trying to come in illegally, and we shore up one border and people start coming through another. That's obviously a problem. So yes, we've had over 2 million or nearly 2 million illegal immigrants come into the country, people that we know of. There's been a number of that we don't know of, obviously. And, the people that are coming into the country represent over 100 countries from around the world, many of them on the terror watch list, and they're coming through the southern border through Mexico. So one of the things that I would do is, like I mentioned, we need to close the border and we need to finish the wall. And again, there's a plan on my website. You can see that there, again, sampetersforcongress.com. These are steps that we need to take immediately. And then we need to hold Mexico accountable because they hold some responsibility for this and allowing those caravans to come through.
But beyond, as you just suggest, finishing the wall and closing the borders, is there a more nuanced, is there a more legislative tact that can be taken beyond just the physical nature of closing the border? It's a bigger issue than just that.
No, it absolutely is, and it's actually a rewrite of our federal immigration laws. In fact, the Supreme Court just this morning made mention of the fact that Congress has law that's written that allows interpretation, and it doesn't say, and they said in the Justice Roberts, I believe it was, said in his decision that if Congress wanted to make it mandatory, they would have said it clearly. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to make the law much more clear on what needs to happen when people enter this country illegally. They should be removed.
I feel like tackling immigration has been a challenge for Republicans and Democrats for as long as I can remember.
It is.
What's going to be different?
It's a tough situation. It absolutely is. But we have to take a look. Our country is, we have a country that's sovereign. We have a responsibility to the citizens and those who want to immigrate here. And if we don't develop a clear, concise, and appropriate immigration platform and law, then we're going to continue having these problems. The federal government over decades has created this issue, and we need to fix it. And it's going to be a tough scenario, but we have to have courage to do it.
Final question I want to touch on. You mentioned your years in the military and your service in the military. What are some of the issues that you think need to be addressed right away with the Defense Department and for veterans?
Well, I think veterans, one of the first things I would do, and I've commented on this recently, the people who have been denied their religious exemptions from taking the COVID shot and removed from the military. These are heroes. These are people who are fighting for their country and have stood up to fight for America, and they've been denied their First Amendment right and removed from service. I would like to see them put back in service if they would volunteer to do so without prejudice, and let them serve their country as they've decided and we've paid and trained them to do. That's top of mind for me right now, but there's a lot of work to be done in the Department of Defense as well. Obviously, the Department of Defense leadership has gone in a very woke ideology and teaching, there's teachings of critical race theory. I've seen letters and memos just recently that have gone out that are just, in my opinion, inappropriate. So I would be very interested in being on the committees that would have those discussions and make sure that the military and the Department of Defense is focused fully on defending the United States against its aggressors, and we have aggressors that we need to be defending against.
What's inappropriate about some of the things that you're talking about?
Well, critical race theory is an absolute inappropriate from a government standpoint. Forcing people to judge on race, color, and nationality and others. That is the basis of critical race theory, and it needs to. We can do better than that. We're all Americans. We're citizens. Again, I love my country, and I don't judge you based on your opinions, the color of your skin, or anything else. And I don't think we should be doing that in the military.
Sam Peters, running for Congressional District 4 as a Republican. Good luck in your campaign, sir, and we'll keep in touch as things go along.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Take care.